Hey losers, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I am here today with my favorites of the year. Usually I do multiple of these, multiply. But looking at what I read, usually I have to break it down. And usually even I do like two horror categories, one for traditionally published horror and one for indie horror. But I could only find like 3 indie horror books that I read last year that I really loved. And so that's a problem because I didn't read very much. And also because I didn't really like what I read, right, obviously. So I'm going to try to read more this year for sure. So anyway, also I didn't really read much out of the genre, so maybe I'm gonna have to throw some other shit in this year. I'll have to see. I am going to try to read a larger number of books this year. That's one of my goals. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, here are some books I really loved, and I'm gonna start with books by authors that I had read previous to last year. So I had read a book before last year. I liked it, and then I picked up another one of their books last year. First, I should talk about Bent Heavens by Daniel Kraus. This was a book about a teenage girl whose father had disappeared and was presumed dead, and before he went missing, he had this idea that he had been abducted by aliens. And he became obsessed with it and was setting traps to catch aliens around his property. And he had kind of like roped her and like her friend, her like neighbor slash friend, or neighborhood, maybe, I don't know if they were neighbors, but a friend from her childhood, and her into like also doing this alien trapping. And her and her friend have continued that even after his disappearance, and one day they find something in one of the traps, and it is like a really sad, hard story. I think that this is supposed to be, I think that this might be a YA book, but it's a book that I think would be like really mature YA just because of some of the things that happen in this psychologically. It's definitely like probably not a book I would give like a 12-year-old. Like, it was disturbing to me. But it was like it was really good and deeply sad. But I really enjoyed it. Then this behemoth, Wayward by Chuck Wendig. This is like the 7th Chuck Wendig book I've read or something like that. I just keep picking them up, and he keeps writing them, and I keep picking them up, and that's the way I want it to be for a long time. This is the sequel to Wanderers. I almost said Wayward. That's not it. And that is this just, oh my god, this expansive novel about disease that decimates the earth. And really coincidentally and eerily, it came out at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and it was like, this is too coincidental, right? It's too scary. There's like political stuff in this book, and it's just so weird. But the big plot in this is that there are these people who start sleepwalking, basically. They are like not really conscious, but they are moving. And it starts with like this one girl, and then all of a sudden like more people they like become this herd. Like people keep meeting up, and they're all like this. Like, they don't speak, they're just walking, and that's all they do. They don't need to rest, they don't eat or drink, they just walk. And some of their family members are like following them, and some people around the country see this as like a bad omen. And it's like, oh, this book, it's so much deeper than that too. But like, I can't talk about it forever, but it's such a really great a great book, and then the sequel was, it just, I have a hard time with sequels because it's like, you really have to wow me, right? It can't be any less good than the first book, right? And Chuck Wendig really did not let me down at all with this. It was so good. It's like, it's a series that I'm going to revisit for sure. Then, The Vessel by Adam L.G. Nevill. I don't know when he decided to add LG into his name, but here he is. This is a novella, and this was so good. This is about a woman named Jess, and she is recovering from a domestic violence situation where her ex-husband was serving time in prison, and now he's out and he's trying to like weasel his way back into her life. She has a young daughter who doesn't really know all of the situation. Her mom's really sheltered her. Jess has sheltered her from it, like, as she kind of, has to, because the child can't know all about that stuff. It's inappropriate, obviously. But it's causing a lot of issues when the father shows up and the daughter wants to see him, and, Jess has to be like, no, and the daughter doesn't understand why, but like, anyway, so it's really hard on Jess, and she is like scrambling to be a single mother, and she like doesn't have money, and she's trying to like move away from where she is to somewhere where maybe her ex-husband doesn't have as easy access to her and her daughter, and she is able to get this like caretaking job for this old woman named Flo, and Flo is like almost nonverbal. She cannot walk by herself, and she is violent, and it's like really like a not ideal situation for Flo, but Flo is like, you know what, we can do it, we just do exactly, we just do what Flo needs me to do, and it'll be okay. But one day Jess needs to bring her daughter with her to stay overnight with Flo, and all of a sudden Flo like really perks up and really takes a liking to Jess's daughter, and then from there things get really, really strange, and it's like reading an A24 movie. It's so weird, like, it's weird and sinister and like beautiful somehow, and it was just really, really excellent. Next on my list is Daphne by Josh Malerman. For a long time I really was reluctant to pick up Josh Malerman's books. I think it was like after the popularity of Bird Box, and then I read his book, I think it was Black Mad Wheel, and I really didn't like it, and then like, like Bird Box was so popular, and like I had liked that, but something about it was like, everyone was so obsessed with him, and I was like, like it just like gave me the ick for some reason. And it took me a really long time to pick up his stuff again, but I've really enjoyed what I have since. And Daphne was like no different. This is this like story about this strange urban legend come to life. And the main character in this is a teenage girl who is part of a basketball team, and like the girls from the basketball team start talking about this urban legend of Daphne, and then suddenly like these girls start dying in mysterious ways one by one, and our main character has anxiety, and she is like convinced that like Daphne's doing this, and who's gonna believe her that this urban legend, it's like Candyman. Who's gonna believe you that Candyman's, killed somebody? So it was told really well. I feel like the character's anxiety in this felt really real, you know what I mean? Which is a big thing. I feel like there are books where authors try to write mental illnesses or like addiction and things like that, and it's like clearly this person hasn't suffered that themselves, and like that's good for them, but it's like you're just doing it all wrong. It's terrible, right? But I don't know if Josh Malerman has anxiety issues or what, but this just felt really true. If he doesn't, he did his research on it, because it felt really true and realistic, especially for a teenage girl. So I really liked this one. And then of course There's just a spot saved on every one of these lists for the annual Grady Hendrix book. This is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, and this is a book about two siblings who are estranged, and their parents die in a like a car accident that starts to make like less and less sense the more that they pick it apart, you know? And they have to come together and sell their parents' house, or even just decide if they're gonna sell the house, which is like contentious in itself. And we're really following the sister Louise, and she like hates her brother. I think his name is Mark. She like hates Mark. She feels like he is just like such a spoiled little asshole who's been like such a fuck up, and his parents have their parents have like stuck up for him and let him be like a little jerk their entire lives, right? And so she's like avoided really their family for years because of this. And so it's a story where they have to work together, and can they? And why is the house weird? And are mom's puppets moving around by themselves? And it's just like a really spooky, sad, weird book. And it's just like the way Grady Hendrix writes. It's just humorous without being like fucking stupid, and there's a lot of like soul in his writing too. Like I think he probably just like puts one little strand of his soul into every final manuscript he writes, and that's how it turns out so good. But like slowly he's depleting his body, or I don't know, something weird like that. Anyway, it's a great book. Last one on this part of this list is Tananarive Due. This is the Reformatory, and this book was really hard-hitting, but really such a great book. This is about a young boy named Robbie who is 12 years old, and he has a really unconventional family life right now, and it hasn't always been that way. So it makes it maybe a little bit harder for him that it's so messed up right now. But his mother has recently died, and he's being raised by his sister, who's only a few years older than him. His father's had to flee the state because he is an activist, and like he's worried about not only being killed himself, but also like his children being in danger if he stays around. So him and his sister Gloria are on their own, and he gets into just like a little tussle. It's like really something so minuscule, but it ruffles the right man's feathers, and Robbie gets sent to this reformatory that is haunted, and Robbie can see the spirits of the boys who have died there. And it's just a really sad, terrible story about Robbie trying to survive his time in the reformatory, because it's like, will he survive? It's just such a terrible place that, you know, any sort of fraction could mean death, like no matter how small. And it's about Gloria like doing everything she can to try to save her brother, and it's just like so, oh my god, just like broke my heart and then put it back together. It was such a great book, and a book that, even though it was, you know, on the thicker side, it felt like every moment was really important, and I really loved this book. All right, now for the second part of this list. These are authors I had not read previous to 2023. The first two books I want to tell you about, these one I got as an audio arc from Libro FM. This was VenCo by Cherie Dimaline, and this was this like really strange, kind of whimsical, fun, but a little bit sinister book about this coven who is trying to find their final member so that they can like solidify their coven, I guess. And protect itself because they're being hunted by like this witch hunter. And so you get the perspective of like the member that they've found, and you get like the backstory of the other members and how they discovered that they were a part of this coven. And then you also get, which I think maybe was most interesting to me, like this witch hunter and stuff like that. And it was just a nice story about like friendship and community and stuff like that. And I really, really liked it. And then also Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. This was like a weird fever dream, like dipped in face serum that was squeezed from 1 million tortured sea slugs or something. I don't know. It's like so weird. But this is about a college-aged woman. Her parents are Chinese immigrants, and they've like provided everything that they can to nurture her talent as a pianist. And because of this tragedy in her life, she has kind of given up her piano, and at this point she's working like a menial job until at the very beginning of the book she is kind of scouted by this natural, like holistic store. I think it's called Holistic. And she's like, oh wow, like this is kind of great. But things have a sinister undertone for sure, but it's a book about friendship and weird shit, like the sinister side of wellness. And I don't know, it's just so strange, and it was really good. It's definitely more on the literary side, but it kept my interest the entire time. I wanted to know what was going on and like what these fucking people were up to. It was so strange, like just the wacky shit that they're talking about, the wacky kind of treatments these people were doing to their bodies was really fun. I don't know how the author came up with this shit, but it's like also plausible. It's so strange. So I really liked that. And I can't wait to read more books in this vein. It was so strange and wonderful, and I loved it. Then this fucking hunk of seal meat. This is The Terror by Dan Simmons. This is the first time I've read a Dan Simmons book, and let me tell you, it is an immersive experience. This is not going to be for everybody. This is so slow paced. It is written like someone from this fucking Arctic expedition in the 1845s wrote it. You know what I mean? He conjured up a ghost from the Franklin expedition to write this for him, I swear to God. But this is about the Franklin expedition from 1845, who, I mean, I really don't know if, I feel like I've heard of that before, but in this take on this story, if that's a real story, they get iced in and their boat never unfreezes, you know what I mean? Or like the ice never lets up, so they're just like ice locked and they're there for years and they can't leave. And there's also this monster on the ice that starts hunting them. And so it's like, it's just like such a good book. It's such a good book, and it goes to places I'd never expect. The ending especially, it's like, whoa, I would have not seen that ever coming. But it was so great, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great, I mostly listened to this on audio before bed. It was a really great bedtime audio. It just put me right the fuck to sleep in such a good way. But there were some very, very creepy parts in this, and some really interesting parts, and some parts of like betrayal that made me so angry, and it was really so good. And I am really excited to pick up more of Dan Simmons' work. Okay, and then I read Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison, which was so fucking good. This is a werewolf novel. It tells you right up at the top, so that is not a spoiler. This is about a woman named Rory who is visiting her twin sister in their hometown, and she is attacked and bitten by a werewolf. And at first she's kind of in like denial about what happened, and then of course she starts to feel kind of crazy, and then you know, the changes happen. She's going through like some changes in her life, as is her sister, and it's just a book where there's like some really good character growth, and it's like really funny. Like I really loved the main character in this, and I really loved like the conclusion of this and where it ended up, and I just loved like being in this story, and I can't wait to read more of Rachel Harrison's work. Like if this is what I can expect from her other novels, like holy shit, like this could be one of my favorite authors, I think. So I'm definitely going to be reading some of her other shit. Like this was so good. I don't remember a time where I've liked a main character so much. Then a nonfiction. This is Girly Drinks by Mallory O'Meara, and this is the history of women and alcohol, just like it says on the cover. This had so many interesting like tidbits of information. It goes through, you know, like the earliest mentions of alcohol in history, all the way to like the most modern, you know, the 2010s and stuff like that. We're talking about different places in the world, and how I think the most interesting part of this to me was that ancient alcohol making was really left up to women, and until men were like, ooh yeah, we don't really like you having the freedom to do that. Like when Christianity became more widespread, which is kind of interesting to think about. It made me really want a nice drink. It's not just beer either. It's like cocktails and gin and I don't know, fucking all sorts of alcohol that I can't remember anymore. But it was a really great read, and there were just so many interesting facts and so many fun things to learn about cultures that were not my own, you know, from all around the world. We're talking Africa and Asia and the Middle East, like Egypt. There was a lot of stuff about Cleopatra, which was really interesting. Mesopotamia, England, you know, the UK, Europe, stuff like that. And I really love this. All right, well, I think maybe this might have been my favorite book of the year. This is Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite, although this author has transitioned and now goes by the name Billy Martin. And you know, I'm not really sure of the nuances of that. So if you do know, like, should I be calling him? Am I dead naming him by saying Poppy Z. Brite? I really hope not, truly, but he hasn't written anything under his name that he uses now. So I don't know the nuances of that. So if you do, let me know. But this is Exquisite Corpse, and this is an exquisite book. And oh my God, like, this is a book that this is a book that changed me this year, I think. This is going to be the book that I compare every book to now that I read. You know what I mean? This is transgressive and like somehow romantic in like the grossest way. This is about two serial killers who meet under the most perfect circumstances and prey on a young man named Tran, and it is so fucking sad. I think what's most interesting about this book is that you follow all three of these characters. There's also a fourth character in there who, I don't know, it was interesting to see things from his perspective, but the people I was most interested in obviously was Andrew, Jay, and Tran. Yeah, Jay and Andrew happen to meet. They're both terrible people, and Tran gets caught in the crossfire of this, and So it's like, you know that this thing is going to happen to Tran, and the author still walks you through Tran's life and makes him such a like sweet, relatable person. Like he's just a normal ass person and you get to know him and you like him, and it's like, you know, this terrible thing's going to happen and you're still there with him, and it's like, why are you doing this to me? So it's not a spoiler when I say that this happens to Tran, you know what I mean? But it's like, that's not what's important about this book. What's important is like being there for the journey, I guess. And oh, it's just such a fucking good book. I think this is my favorite book of the year. I'm just really sad that I'll never read this again for the first time. Okay, then we have Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This is a novel about a Catholic orphanage in the early 20th century in a remote valley in Pennsylvania. So it is remote. They have to travel to get anywhere. They live kind of in solitude. They just kind of hang out with themselves. And our main character here, Peter, is like a really nice boy. He is entering his like older teenage years, and he is thinking that he will stay with the church and become a priest. So he's like getting ready to make that decision. But one night, him and one of his fellow orphans hears a knock upon the orphanage door. And what they hear after that is very strange and confusing. Basically, there is a man there, a group of men there, and one who is in really dire, like, he's about to die. And like the group of men are pleading, like, please let us in, please help him. He's about to die. And the man is like making very strange noises. It's just like, it's really weird. And the boys are very, it's just very eerie and strange. And after this event, some of the orphans start to act strangely. And it's just a really great book. And that's all I'll tell you. It is heartbreaking. It is such a wild ride, and one that I really loved every minute of. I think Philip Fracassi is such a really excellent author, and he does a great job of making you care about the characters that he's written so he can devastate you. So yeah, this was so good and can't recommend it enough. All right, last book here, but certainly not least. This is Maeve Fly by CJ Leede, and this is about a woman named Maeve who lives in LA. She works at Disneyland, although the author obviously cannot say that in the book. She is Elsa at the park, and she really loves her job. She loves her pina coladas and her dive bar. And she also loves causing people anguish. And she happens to meet her friend's brother, and something about him really sparks this, like, I don't know, this, it's like she already had this burner on in her, right? Like she already knew that she was kind of weird and twisted, but it's like all of a sudden she meets this man and it's like the burner is cranked to 10 and chaos ensues basically. So this is a really strange novel where there's not like a big huge plot line. You're really just there for Maeve. And that's okay with me because I loved her as a character. My favorite thing about her is that she just unapologetically likes what she likes. There's no like explaining, you know, I feel like for example, her pina coladas. Some women would feel the need to explain why they love such a girly drink. You know what I mean? Not Maeve. Why does she love old Hollywood so much? She she doesn't give a shit, you know what I mean? Like, she doesn't need to explain this to you. She just likes it. Like, why does she love Halloween? Who gives a fuck? Why does she love Disneyland and being Elsa? She doesn't give a shit what you think about it, you know what I mean? But it's not even like on her, she doesn't even feel like she needs to explain it. Like, it's not even a prerogative. She doesn't even, I don't know, what am I saying? Like, it's so beneath her to feel like she even has to explain it. That's the vibe I get, and that's a vibe I strive to have. So, that's Maeve Fly. That is the last book on my list of favorites from 2023. I would love to know if we share any favorites. I would love to know what your favorites that you read last year were, whether they're horror or not. I would love to take a peek at those. So yeah, that's it. I will have a list on my bookshop.org page if you'd like to take a look at that. I've got a link to that in my description. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye.